My name's Raymond Martin. I'm from Northern Ireland, and in 2004 I lost my younger brother, Richard Martin. He died from a heart condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. He had been contracted with it in June of 2004, and he had been diagnosed via the ECG. Then he went and saw a cardiologist, and he had been advised to give up rugby. And so at that point he went to Australia for a month, but he was going there with the school on a rugby trip, but he didn't play any rugby at all while he was out there. But when he came back to Northern Ireland, he'd give up the rugby, but being quite sporty, he started playing tennis, and he was playing tennis with his friends, and on a day in November 2004 he passed away while playing tennis. And on that day it was a complete disaster for our family, and I'll never forget it. We got a phone call that Richard had collapsed on the tennis court. My dad and I went in, and sure enough, there he was. He was collapsed on the court. But at the time that we were arriving, the ambulance was also arriving that had been called, and so we mistakenly thought, well, he's going to be okay now because there's an ambulance here and the paramedics will go to work on him and he'll be fine. And so they did, but it was too late. Basically, he had had a heart attack because of Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. He collapsed and it was too long. So you know, he's dead basically. So yeah, that's what happened. Well, it was a complete disaster. I can't emphasize that enough. Basically, there was a lot of shock. We couldn't understand. We couldn't take it in, even though Richard had been diagnosed the previous June. We knew he had a heart condition. Fact is, we never knew that it was life-threatening. We never knew that he could die from it. So we were quite unaware of the dangers there, really. So there was shock, massive grief, and then there was anger, because we started questioning ourselves. You know, could we have done anything to actually, you know, have kept Richard here? What could we have done? And then there was anger also with the health service, because we felt as though the information that had been put across had not been put across properly. For example, whenever Richard was diagnosed initially, we had a GP who told us that Wolff-Parkinson-White was not life-threatening, that Richard could not die from that heart condition, which we found out afterwards, obviously, to be completely untrue. And then also the fact that Richard was playing tennis. I mean, it's very easy to say, well, you know, that was his fault, but the fact is he was smart, and we believe that the seriousness of his condition was not accurately conveyed whenever he was speaking to his cardiologist. So we had a lot of anger there, a lot of issues. We know that people can make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but we just feel as though, you know, if we hadn't been advised that it wasn't life-threatening, then we would have had a different approach. We also would have liked it if maybe whenever Richard had seen his cardiologist, maybe some sort of literature or some sort of written advice could have been given to him, so he could become more aware. And also, of course, the words. It's important whatever was said to him was accurate, and accurately telling him, right, you've got a life-threatening condition and you could die from this, so you need to not do X, Y and Z. That includes all sport, anything that raises your heart rate, don't do it. We just feel as though he wasn't really told in those terms, and that could have been why he didn't anticipate what could have happened. That could have been why he didn't treat the issue with the seriousness it needed. So the anger set in. There was an awful lot of grief and mourning, obviously, when something like that happens to a young person. He was only 17. And it took a long time, I would say, for our family to get back to any sort of normality. I'd say my parents were shadows of their former selves, and we still suffer. It's just something we don't talk about it that much because it's hard, but it's always there. It's always just underneath the surface, you know. You've got a brother who died from a heart attack when he was 17. You know, why? So a lot of pain, but you know, we managed to sort of try and readjust. I think the charity Cardiac Risk in the Young, actually helping them helped us. You know, fundraising, trying to raise awareness through their activities so that, you know, other families could be made more aware of the dangers of these conditions, so that, you know, they could either go and get themselves screened if they were a young person, or, you know, once screened, do the proper things, you know, get the right advice and make sure that they do everything in their power to keep themselves safe. So it helped us to work with Cry, and that's been good. He was a very capable individual, I would say. I mean, he was my younger brother, so, you know, when he died he was 17, I was 21. But at that time he was doing A-levels at the local school, and he was doing really well. You know, he'd received straight A's in his AS levels in lower sixth, and he was in the process of applying to do medicine at Newcastle University, and I don't doubt that he would have made it there if this hadn't have happened to him. He'd probably still be there, or just finishing off his training right about now. So he was quite a driven person, very determined. He was very headstrong. He knew what he wanted, and he would go for it. Once his mind was made up, that was it. So, yeah, I think he would have been a good doctor. And, well, couldn't praise him enough, really. You know, he had lots of friends, very popular, very sociable, outgoing. He's badly missed by them as well. And he was very sporty. Yeah, loved his rugby. You know, he hated not being able to play it. So I think if he would have been able to, he would have enjoyed continuing his sport as well, and enjoying his life. That's what he did.